Welcome to the NFL Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. And we've got NFL play-up props here. Week 16, just roughly, 3-4 weeks left in the NFL. So definitely want to continue to follow along as we head into these playoffs. We're going to be bringing you a couple best bets each year. Got about 3 player props that we're talking about, maybe a little bonus in there as well. We're going to be mostly sticking to these games on Sunday, give you guys enough time to make sure that you're getting in these plays so that you can get them at the number we're playing as well. But also want to quickly remind you that we do have a current deal with BetMGM in partnership to help you guys get some free money. So if you sign up for a BetMGM sportsbook account, if you don't yet still have one, use the code TheLinesYT50. That'll get you up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet fails to cash. Plus, you'll go ahead and get $50 in free money regardless, just for using that code. So definitely recommend it. If BetMGM is in your area and you don't yet have an account, strongly recommend signing up to make sure you can shop these lines to the best of your ability. So, Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first play-up prop here. We're targeting that Rams game.
Yeah, I'm taking Cooper Kupp coming off a bagel for over 56.5 receiving yards and or 5.5 receptions, which is started at plus 115 and has been bet down a little bit in terms of the juice, but the number is still the same. And the best prices for those are on MGM, as you mentioned. So feel free to use those promos on that. But I mean, it's not like Cooper Kupp is a guy who's going to be a squeaky wheel and complain at all about having 0 catches on 3 targets. But I mean, Sean McVay is going to look at himself in the mirror and talk with the staff about like, okay, we got to get Cooper involved a little bit more here. I mean, anybody who saw that game in the rain on Thursday last night knows it was just not made for offense. Classic slugfest divisional game. And you look at his last 6 now against divisional opponents. Coop's getting 4.3 catches for 53 yards. So it's all the familiarity, all the eye candy, bells and whistles that the Rams use to get him open. They're much more familiar with it. But when he plays a very unfamiliar team, like say out of the AFC, 6.5 catches on 9 targets for 98 yards per game, including, going off against Buffalo, the game immediately prior, while Puka still went off. And I mean, the scary thing about this is that just Puka is the goddamn man. One of the toughest freaking wide receivers in the game, and he's going to funnel a lot of targets towards himself, even with Sauce Gardner on him. But I mean, he does have Sauce on him, and Sauce, don't be fooled by the deadpan and the slow start. Like he can still lock you up. And that'll at least be a slightly tougher matchup than I think Cooper will have against either DJ Reed, Michael Carter, whatever, the Jets D, which is just poorly coached. They were top 3 in a lot of defensive metrics when they fired Robert Saleh. They are now 31st in EPA per play since then. And they just continue they've given up 25 plus in like 6 straight games, including to Mac Jones last week. So Coach Ulbrich not getting it done. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. When if you don't know how to coach against what McVay does with Kupp, moving him around, getting him quick receptions, you're going to be in trouble. But the Jets, the one thing they have done is limit the big play, the big shot. They've only allowed 1 touchdown outside the red zone all year. Playing a lot of like safe cover 1 with man underneath. So, I mean, that to me indicates like Puka, that's where Puka excels, is on these like shot plays down the sideline, versus Kupp is going to kind of methodic. If you need a methodical drive, it's going to be a lot of Cooper Kupp, right? A lot of quick shots. So I really like the receptions here at plus money, but I think both are going to come home.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, anybody against the Jets, I don't know how to differentiate anymore between Kupp and Puka, to be honest with you. It makes sense that when you're trying to matriculate down the field rather than just explosively get there in a couple plays, makes sense, honestly, for both of them. But the Kupp is obviously also that third down guy. And if you told me that you were taking anybody against the New York Jets right now, I would be fine with that. To your point, like that was my first thought when Robert Saleh was gone. I was like, well, he was the only thing that was working was the defense, and that was him. So what do you do? What are you doing now? But anyway, we'll move on here to Bijan. We're going to go into that Atlanta game, and we're going to take some Bijan Robinson against my New York Giants. And look, I'm as happy as day that the Giants suck. By the way, nobody appreciates that more than Giants fans right now. We get a pick, and maybe we don't have Gettleman to ruin it for us, so that's great. But let me talk about Bijan. We were both talking about, do we do rushing, receiving? You definitely made a good point that I think we add the receiving, so it's 114.5 rushing, receiving combined. if you want to go a little crazy on this, man, I know Nate was talking about it, you get plus 265 for 2 tutties. That's worth a quarter unit sprinkle or something to that effect. I think he gets in there probably twice on the ground, and I think he gets in there twice from further away than the red zone, to be honest with you. I could easily see both of those things happening for Bijan. It's his backfield, right? And we've been talking about that on this show, and I've definitely been looking at this for a little while now, which is like, I think we're in the Bijan is the dominating running back mode finally, and Algiers only going to be out there in spots, right, and not necessarily as an every down back or really any kind of like splitting of the drives. He's had 20 plus carries in 4 straight, just except that blowout versus Denver. Tough to run the ball in that situation. Last 3, though, he's played some good rush defenses, at least 2 of them. 106 yards per game in the last 3, just on the ground. That's against the Chargers, the Vikes, and then the Raiders, who are a little bit better than we think they are. But more importantly, it's against 2 very, very, very good rush defenses in the Chargers and that pass funnel in Minnesota. We've got the Michael Penix starting debut. This should just make things easier for us. I mean, we talk about this too consistently. When you've got that rook out there or anybody that you don't really trust at quarterback, going to be looking at receiving for the running back, going to be looking at receiving for maybe some tight ends and some short yardage guys, things of that nature, right? You don't want to make him sit there and have to read 2 to 3 to 4 different reads each time. You really want a little bit more of that first read stuff. And when they are designing plays for Bijan, then obviously he's the first read. He's pretty much the only read if it's a screen of any kind. And I think we'll see at least a few of those. The G-men, they allow the 6th most receiving yards per game to the running back. In part because they used to be good at rushing the quarterback. They're actually not that good at it anymore with Sexy Dexy not out there, Dexter Lawrence. But honestly, they can't do anything good now. It's not like they can stop the running back just because Dexter Lawrence isn't out there. It's just that teams were forced to throw to their running back a bit more to get it out quickly. And that might not be the case here, but you're still going to see Penix throw it to him. So I like adding the receiving because it's so low. It's at like 21.5 yards. And if you look at some of the rushing against this team, that's really what it comes down to. That's why I consider just 90.5. If you took the 90.5 yards rushing or just, a little baby alt line up to like 100 yards plus for him to get like some plus 130 or so for Bijan on the rushing yards alone, I love that. But I do think it's safe to add the receiving. Either way, look at some of the stuff since we lost Daniel Jones. I say we lost him. We just let him go. But since he left the squad, there's been really a couple of more running backs who just absolutely pounded us that should not have, including Bucky Irving for a $152 and a tutty. I'll just leave that there. This is more embarrassing. Rico Dowdle, 112 rushing yards for the worst, like at least a bottom 3 rushing team in the Cowboys this season. And Rico Dowdle had his way with this squad that it's just, there's no adjusted yards before contact. They're getting no push on the defensive line in the run game. All they're trying to do is just fly towards the quarterback. And that's not going to work with the personnel that they now have. So it's just all bad. And I'd expect the Falcons to basically have their way in terms of the time of possession. And that's going to lead to a lot of touches for Bijan.
Yeah, and I think the reason I like 2 touchdowns potentially is when you get down near the goal line, you're not expecting a rookie to be able to finish these drives. Like we saw Caleb and Jaden Daniels. It took them like 5 games to throw a freaking touchdown in the NFL. Like it is just so tough to figure out how to get it done in the red zone. So I would expect Atlanta to just be like, just hand off. Like once they get inside that 20. And yeah, I mean, the Giants, you highlighted it since that Daniel Jones debacle, like how do you play for this organization? Like, how does anybody get up for these games? They've covered once in this losing streak in general, but the last 4 have been like the other offense doing whatever they want. Granted, the Saints didn't necessarily blow them up, but like Kamara still had a pretty good output. And then he got injured / just, kind of faded away because the Saints offense ain't what the Falcons is, despite how they struggle with Kirk Cousins lately. I think they can definitely pound this team. So, my second bet, not for the faint of heart, is Joe Burrow under 279.5. Although people are steaming this. I mean, it opened 280, and I think at a lot of books now we're down at 277, 76. Because I mean, you just got to project game flow here. I mean, the Browns, what they're signaling here by benching Jameis for Dorian Thompson-Robinson is we want to play an under here. We want to play a really low-scoring game that it features a lot of running and fewer possessions, and hopefully we can just keep Burrow off the field by bleeding that clock against a horrendous Bengals run defense and avoid mistakes. Because Dorian Thompson-Robinson is worse than Anthony Richardson passing the ball. He is on par with like Tommy DeVito as like the worst quarterback you will see out there on the field this year. So
Drive-by Tommy DeVito shooting.
it's just a safe play here for the Browns to be like, just don't throw a pick six, please, and then we're better off than with Jameis. And so that's what they're tipping here. And so I project, either we have that kind of game or we have a blowout where they go 3-and-out every freaking time. And the last time we saw that for the Bengals, they blew out the Raiders. Burrow had 39 pass attempts. He had 5 touchdowns. They had 35 minutes of possession. How many yards did he finish with? 251, because they had short fields. They had easy opportunities. So that's one way this doesn't come home. I mean, and then the last 4 have just been ridiculous shootouts for the Bengals, and that's why his numbers are crazy. And he can put it up when he needs to, but they need W's. They don't need 300 passing yards from Burrow. And the Bengals are going to be in a good spot here. So that's one way this can cash. The other way is the Browns D just continues to have his number, which they have in 4 straight, kind of really giving him trouble, held him to 183 yards a game. And they've kind of turned it around a little bit in the secondary, only allowing 207 the last 3 yards per game, 10th fewest yards per attempt, and facing the 5th lowest pass play rate as opponents are, starting to pound it against their defensive front as well. Bengals don't have much of a run game to speak of, but they definitely would like to get Chase Brown on track. His prop is pretty damn high as well. So yeah, I think you take the under if you don't quite have the stomach for it and you want to just take T Higgins under to kind of hedge against the potential that Jamar Chase has one of his 190 yard games or something, and that's most of Burrow's yardage. Right. I think that's another safe way to play it. But I just think there's a couple scenarios where Burrow doesn't really get near 300 here.
Yeah, I agree that there's more likely scenarios for that, because if they dominate this first half, why would you be throwing in the second half? If they're not dominating, then he's not hitting his throws, because it's not going to be a dominant run game situation for one of the worst rushing offensive lines in the league for Cincinnati. But Chase Brown will still probably be heavily involved in this game through the air, and potentially shorter yardage plays to just pick up those third downs, not necessarily worrying about getting big explosive plays. But there is always the likelihood that Jamar Chase takes ones for 80 yards. Obviously, that puts a big problem into the under there. But man, like you said, not for the faint of heart. And I like where your head's at on a bit of a zag here with Joe Burrow, even though there's some popularity to going under in a game that they should win by a lot. Let me go to BTJ, one of the, let's call him the only bright spot in the season that is Jacksonville this year. But we can take BTJ. They hit on that pick, man. They definitely got that pick right for sure. And so we're going to take him for over 71.5 receiving yards. Probably also get him for the over 24.5 long reception as well, with Mac Attack feeding him the ball there. We got Mac Jones back in there, as we know. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence not going to be seen again since week 10 for this man. For Brian Thomas Jr., we're talking about a 33% first read share. For anybody who is a Patriots fan and has watched Mac Jones play, very important that his first read is open for him. I think we all know that. And he has a 27% target share overall for Brian Thomas Jr. The only guy that's really even coming close to eating into his receptions at this point, with no more Christian Kirk, is going to be like an Evan Ingram, maybe a Brenton Strange backup tight end. That's what we're talking about as competition for BTJ running routes right now for Mac Jones. Since the bye week, by the way, 12 targets per game, 163 air yards per game as well. So you like that for the yards for him as he's running downfield. And we're going to go right back to picking on Jack Jones on the Raiders and take him to not do well against Brian Thomas Jr. He's 98th amongst cornerbacks in opponent QB rating. He is 97th in fantasy points per target. So teams are getting what they want against Jack Jones, simply put. We got no more Max Crosby. Don't really need to worry about Mac being under too much pressure without Max Crosby. This Raiders line had a massive jolt from having Crosby out there, both in the run game, by the way, and in the pass game. But the Jags can't run the ball, and we've known that all season. And that was sort of the first sort of like tire to fall off the car for this team this season, was like, oh, Travis Etienne's not good anymore. Okay, well, Tank Bigsby's good. Oh, shoot, wait, Tank Bigsby's not good right now either, and he got a little bit banged up, and this offensive line can't open up a hole for him. And that was sort of like the beginning of the dominoes really just falling off of this Jacksonville season. Obviously, a lot more continued to go wrong. But if you look at the Vegas defense here, they're actually allowing the second highest percentage of their yards via the pass, 74% against them. So you can probably expect them to have to be throwing against a Raiders team that, no, it's not good. Aiden O'Connell, a.k.a. Farva, probably going to be back out there again for whatever reason. But even if he is, or if it's Ritter, doesn't matter. They're going to probably have some success against this Jags defense for sure. So I'm going to feel really good about the offense having a bit more success, even though I'm not planning on watching this game, and Brian Thomas Jr. to do the bulk of the yard getting here for the Jags.
Nah, yeah, don't watch this game. Just wait for Red Zone to be like, oh, we got a downfield shot here to Brian Thomas, and be like, yes, longest reception. Because, yeah, I mean, he's a big playmaker. The Jack Jones thing, like, I mean, we targeted him last week with Drake London. London had 53 yards in the first quarter and a touchdown. And then I think the Falcons threw like 5 times the entire rest of the game because they were like, just please don't throw a pick, Kirk Cousins. Like, we're going to beat this team. Let's just feed Bijan. Jags have nothing to lose, though. They're going to be throwing it. Mac Jones, whether it's the coaching staff telling him to or just being like, who else I got? He's just like, I'm just going to drop back and fling it to this dude over and over, who I can't believe he went 23rd. Like, there's some teams out there who are like, shit, we should have grabbed this dude. He's going to be a stud. In another draft, he would have gone higher. But
yeah,
I'm actually taking 2 unders this week. I am going Kenneth Walker is back. Woo! So we get to take his under again because he ain't it. Under 81.5 rushing and receiving yards. Best price at MGM, or they were the first people to get the lineup for sure. Because, I mean, not to put it on Walker, like, I think he's a talented dude. The Seahawks run blocking is bad, and Zach Charbonnet is just a little bit of a better fit for a bad run blocking team. Like, he has been poaching Walker at the goal line before this injury, the calf injury that kept Walker out for 2 games. It was about a 60-40 split with Charbonnet in there. He was getting a ton of routes. So if the Seahawks fall behind against the Vikings, which everybody seems to do in that first half, more Charbonnet, more running routes. And Charbonnet second among RBs in juke rate and 7th in yards created. Walker's 14th. He's doing what he can behind this bad offensive line too, but Charbonnet's been better. And they've kind of found something in these last 2 games. I mean, it was a disaster against the Packers, but the previous game, Charbonnet on these kind of like inside handoffs where he's able to go off tackle, and just a different look than Walker, who is trying to dance around and make something happen. But I mean, the Seahawks offense is also pretty bad at home. Geno is not great, and he's playing through injury as well. The last 5 at home for Kenny, 37 rush yards per game at 2.7 yards per carry. Last 5 overall, 48 at 3 yards per carry. He's been able to tack on some receiving yards, so maybe that makes you nervous with the combo here, but Minnesota allows the 7th fewest to the running back position. They just have really good athletes at linebacker, and they're really good at both putting pressure on the quarterback and then still flying to the football and containing, which, should limit Walker from breaking a big one on a reception here. So definitely like the matchup for Minnesota's defense to bottle him up, and for the Seahawks coaching staff to just be like, I think we need more Charbonnet. Like, we can't bench this dude after what he's done.
Yeah, they got a fever. The only thing that's going to solve that is some more Charbonnet. I had to say, once you say, give me some more Charbonnet. But yeah, this is, look, say what you want. This is another situation where it's like, well, I don't know. Why did you draft him? Just choose one of your running backs and fix your offensive line. But yeah, Charbonnet makes a lot more sense for this offense with the lack of holes that you need to kind of fit big old Kenneth Walker through. Still very hard to tackle, obviously. But yeah, I would say Charbonnet is almost more of like a running back. Kenneth Walker's an athlete who you hand the ball to and just get out of the way a little bit more, but you don't have much of a run blocking scheme for him right now. So let me take it over on rushing, and let me take it for Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears, the quarterback there for the Bears. We're going to take him 25 plus minus 125. I think it's worth a sprinkle as well. Plus 135 for 5 more yards at 30 plus. You get $1 more per spent. I think that's worth it there. The thing for him is going to be a little bit of I want to call him Brian Thomas, because we were just talking about Brian Thomas, and these are 2 very generic names, but I'm talking about Thomas Brown, head coach for the Bears. Thomas Brown has really come in and been a lot more of a passing coordinator, essentially, right? Like this pass play percentage for Caleb has gone up in coinciding with the Bears rushing offensive line just being bad and then getting worse. Their passing offensive line also pretty bad. This O-line needs help is a big reason for that for Caleb. He's gone over in 3 of 4 though now with Thomas Brown, and the scrambles have been way up, partly because of the O-line. There's also been a few more design scrambles. I should say there's been about 3 per game for him in the last 4. So I love the opportunity that they're giving him to run. Mostly you see that as them trying to, it's almost like a delayed draw on the QB draw, sort of letting the defense get all the way upfield, the defensive line, because they're going to do that anyway, but using that against them to then run. I've seen a couple of those per game for him, but it's also just him running for his life. He's got 22 scrambles in the last 4 weeks. And in the first 7 games of the season, he had 17 total. So they've lost a couple guys since then too. Obviously that's going to impact the line, but it's out of necessity as much as anything. And now they're going up against the Detroit team that, I mean, man, this is the exact type of team that the quarterback has to run against. There's been some good rushing quarterbacks that have done plenty well against them. Josh Allen just had 61. We had AR-15 there get 68 against them as well. I mean, Baker's gotten 30 plus. There's another like 3 quarterbacks that have gotten 30 plus that you're like, wow, that guy, huh? Okay. Sneaky slow guy that just got this against Detroit. But Detroit's pass defense, it sticks with its man. And then it's really left without, many eyes left on the quarterback. So it's just that simple. For Caleb, I think he's going to have to run. I think he's going to be throwing, right? Like 40 times in this game, at least like 35, 36 times again, which is something he's been doing consistently with Brown. And the Lions are going to force you out of the pocket and force you to run at least like 3 to 4 times in that situation. So he really only needs about 5 yards of carry, in my opinion, to get to the 25. And then the 30 would be pretty attainable as well for some plus money.
Yeah, it's a good look because of the Lions' injuries up front and just their inability. Like they were bottom 5 in rush defense EPA last week against the Bills. Obviously, Josh Allen goes off. That's a different beast altogether. But it just shows you where they're at. That they keep losing guys, and they looked okay against a bad schedule. But then once they start playing up in competition, and not saying the Bears are up in competition by any means, but the cracks are starting to show in the Lions defense. And yeah, Caleb makes something happen. He's been better at home. Right? This is like 3 straight road games for him before this, and he's been much better at home as you would expect for a rookie. So just to stay on the field and get more opportunities, that we need that. We need a little success from the Bears offense after what we saw the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, 100%. So that's all the time we have for you in the NFL Play of Props. Definitely want to make sure to subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along all season with us. Also want to make sure you check out those NBA Play of Props and those best bets that we have for you in the NBA as we cruise along there as well. So until we see you next, happy betting.